In this lesson, we're going to load tracks over onto our decks in Serato DJ Lite, and then we're going to use the party mix to play them. You'll get to use the crossfader for the first time here, and then we're going to do a really rough mix from one deck to another just to give you an idea of how the crossfader works. Let's go! Here are two ways that you can load a track onto a deck. The first way is through using your party mix controller. Remember the browse knob and the deck load buttons that we talked about in the first video? Let's use them now. Use the browse knob to scroll through the crates. I'm going to pick one that I made earlier. Here we are. And then I'm going to click on the browse knob and you'll see the highlighted row move from the left side of the browser over onto the right. Now let's load this song by first making sure that it's highlighted. Yeah, this is the one that I like. And then I'm going to click on the Deck 1 load button over here. There you go, you've just loaded your first song. Now you can also load a song on the deck by clicking on the track here in the browser and dragging it over onto the deck that you'd want to drop it onto. It's the same thing. Now that we've got a track loaded, let's explore the basic controls on the party mix needed to play a track, starting with the jogwheel. Moving the jogwheel lets you shuttle back and forth in a track, and it's perfect for picking out a specific beat to start out on. Let's try doing that, but first, let's check two things. First, I'm going to make sure that the scratch mode button over here is not enabled. This means that when a track is playing and I move the jogwheel, the track either speeds up or slows down, but it won't stop playback. If scratch mode is enabled, the track will stop playback every time I move the jogwheel, and the track responds to my hand movements, just like if I was holding down on a record and scratching. We'll explore scratch mode later on in this course, but for now, let's make sure that it's disabled for both decks. So I'm going to press on the scratch mode button, and now it's disabled. I'm going to do it for deck 2 as well. There we are. Okay, cool. Second, I want to make sure that the crossfader over here is set all the way to the left, which means that we're going to hear the left deck going out of the main speakers. And I also want the volume fader of the left deck to be all the way up so we get the loudest volume possible for this deck. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to pick out the first beat by using the jogwheel. Move it over here, just right at the beginning. And then I am going to press the Q button over here on the party mix over on deck 1 or the left deck. You'll see a white Q point arrow appear over in the waveform display, and basically pressing the Q button will tell Serato DJ to add a Q point, and that basically means that from now on, every time you press the Q button, Serato DJ will jump back to that point while the track is playing. So let's try that. I'm going to press play on this track. I can hear it playing through the main speakers. Cool. Now I am going to press the Q button, and it jumps back to that first beat where we added that Q point. All right, so let's hit play again. And now that we've got this playing, let's take a look at some of the other controls here on the left deck. The volume fader lets you adjust the volume of the left deck. If you move it down, the volume goes down. And if you pull it up, the volume gets louder. More often than not, you'll want the deck volume faders to be at their maximum. Now we can adjust the overall volume of the music coming out of the party mix by moving the master gain knob over here, which lets you adjust how loud the main output is, whether that's a track playing in deck 1, deck 2, or even all the decks combined. Simply adjust it to your liking. I like the volume at the moment, so I'm not going to make any changes to my master gain knob. Okay, so let's press the Q button again. Bring us back to the beginning of this track. And then now let's load a song over onto deck 2 or on the right deck. Let's pick another track from our playlist. Use the browse knob. I'll pick this one. Then now I'm going to press deck load button number 2, which will load the track over onto the right deck. Cool. Now I'm going to make sure that scratch is disabled, which I've already done, and also that the volume fader is set to its maximum, which it is. And then I am going to hit play, but nothing's coming out of the main speakers. Why is that? Well, it's because the crossfader over here is set all the way to the left. Remember that the crossfader dictates what goes out of the main speakers and what doesn't. At the moment, it's only set to let through the left deck. So how do I preview this song that I just loaded over onto the right deck? Okay, remember that we connected two sets of outputs to the party mix. The main speakers, over here, and the headphones, over here. DJs use headphones to preview music that isn't coming out of the main speakers. And that's why headphones are so important. Sure, they make you look cool while you're spinning, but they serve an important function when mixing too. Okay, so for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to do a bit of audio wizardry. You're going to hear the main speakers on the left channel and the headphones over on the right channel. Okay, so I'm going to stop this track first. Okay, so here's how to use your headphones. Remember that we talked about the headphone cue buttons. I'm going to press the headphone cue for the right deck to enable it. That means that this deck or deck 2 in Serato DJ is being sent to my headphones. Next, I'm going to adjust the headphone cue knob and move it all the way anti-clockwise. This means that the only thing I'll be hearing in my headphones will be deck 2. Now let's move the jog wheel in deck 2. There we are. Okay, now we can begin to hear it in our headphones. And I'm going to place a cue point on the first beat just as we did in the last video. Now when I press play, we can hear it playing back in the headphones but not in the main speakers. Not loud enough for you? Use the cue gain knob here to adjust the headphone volume. Go ahead and adjust it to your liking. I like the level that it is right now, so I'm going to leave it as it is. Okay, so let's stop this track first. Press the cue button to jump back to the first beat. And let's have a quick midway recap. I showed you how to load tracks onto both decks, how to use the headphone cue to preview and cue up a track you want to play next, and I also showed you how the volume faders work. Now that we've got two songs loaded, let's try mixing them. Mixing is usually done with a crossfader. If I press play now, we'll start playing deck 1 and we'll hear that in the main speakers because we've got the crossfader set to the left deck. If we hit play on deck 2, we won't hear it coming out of the speakers, only in our headphones because we've got headphone cue engaged. In order to hear deck 2 coming out of the speakers, we need to move the crossfader from the left over onto the right. So this is just a quick and dirty mix, but it's a good way to demonstrate how a crossfader works. Let's try that right now. I'm going to go back to normal sound now so you'll hear the main speakers coming out of the left and the right channels. Okay, so I'm going to hit play on deck 1. Cool. Now I'm going to hit play on deck 2. Now I'll move the crossfader from the left to the right. You'll slowly hear deck 2 come out of the main speakers until eventually deck 1 fades out and all you can hear is deck 2. And that's it. That's your first mix. Now, I know it doesn't sound so good. It sounded like the two tracks were clashing and, well, it sounded pretty messy. That's what you call a train wreck. And that happens because the two tracks I tried to mix weren't in the same BPM or tempo. In the next lesson, I'm going to explain how to get the BPM of two tracks to match. But for now, I want you to have a go at it, pick two songs from your library, load them onto the decks just like what I did, add the cues using the jog wheel and cue button for both decks, enable headphone cue, press play on the party mix controller for deck 1 and then for deck 2, and then I want you to move the crossfader from the left deck over onto the right. I'll see you in the next lesson.